it's so great that you're here. I'm doing this study, and I just need a couple of more subjects. So can I ask you a couple of questions? Yeah? Great. Thank you so much. Okay, just raise your hand if it's a yes, and keep your hand down if it's a no. Super easy. Yeah? First question. Have you heard of technology, entertainment, design? TED. Anyone? I see 90. Keep your hands up, please. 93.934%. Yeah, great. Second question. Do you have the flu? But like really bad, high fever, can't get out of bed flu. 0%. Wow. I guess TED must make you healthy, right? Very interesting, this. Impressive. Last question. This week, have you seen a number? This can be anything, a percentage, an average, a graph. Have you seen a number in the news? Quite a lot. Thank you. This was great, really helpful. So let me introduce myself. My name is Sanne Blauw, and I am a number nerd. And my addiction started when I was quite young. In fact, one of my very first memories was about numbers. You remember these? Connect the dots? These I actually did myself when I was about 4 years old. And I was on this vacation with my family in Germany, and I was just doing one after the other after the other. Super addictive. Then, fast forward 20 years, I was doing my PhD. I was collecting data, analyzing data, and still, in a very different way, but still looking for these patterns in numbers. And now I'm a journalist, and I write about the value of data and statistics. And I think it's just that we can see certain patterns, and those patterns can teach us something about the world. So it's no wonder that our news is full of numbers. Whether it's some headline about refugees coming from an international organization, whether it's the outcome of a political poll, or whether it's some groundbreaking new health insight based on statistical analysis. Smelling farts might prevent cancer. Before you get too excited, this one turned out to be bogus, so behave yourselves, please. Also up there. Great. But whatever they are, these numbers, they shape the way we view the world. They tell us what to eat. They tell us what kind of medicines we should take when we get ill. They tell us how the economy is doing and who we should vote for. So it's very important that these numbers, that they are correct, that we can trust them. Sadly, though, many of those statistics in the news that are supposed to inform us, they actually misinform us. As a wise man once said, torture numbers and they'll confess to anything. And our news today, sadly, is full of such tortured numbers. So I think it's time for some statistical self-defense. Today I want to talk about the 5 most common statistical lies that you see in the newspaper every single day. Are you ready? Great. 1, the good-looking graph. You know these graphs that you see in the newspaper, on the news? They just look too good to be true. And quite often, they actually are a bit too good to be true. Take this one. This graph was shown in the American Congress in the midst of a huge discussion about Planned Parenthood, this health organization. And one Republican congressman put this graph up. And he said, look, Planned Parenthood is doing less and less cancer screening and prevention services. The blue line is going down. And the purple line, abortions, are going up dramatically, quite steep. So we should cut funding to this organization because why should we spend our taxpayers' money on things that aren't saving lives? Something weird with this graph, though, because look at the numbers. The upper right-hand corner says 327,000. Below, it says 950,000 and a little bit. You don't really need a PhD in statistics to know that lower numbers should be lower on the graph. So what happened here? This graph uses two different scales. If you put them on the same scale, the message is very different. Okay, cancer screening and prevention is still going down, but abortions have hardly moved. Second statistical line, the polluted poll. Well, we already did quite a polluted poll just now, I think. But there are many other polls out there in the news. This one, for instance. 1 in 4 women experience sex assault on campus. This was a headline in New York Times. And it's incredibly shocking, right? 25% of female college students have to deal with sex assault. Fortunately, though, it's also probably exaggerated. And the researchers admit this. They say there's probably a bias upwards. But the New York Times didn't mention this in the article. So what is the issue here? Well, 3 things. 1, a very small sample of universities participated. 2, at those universities, more than 80% of the women did not respond to the questionnaire. And 3, the definition of sexual assault was a very broad one here. In fact, the researchers they avoided the word assault because it's a very loaded term. So what could happen is that a girl at a party being hit on by a guy and rejecting him, she might be coined a victim by this survey, even though she would not call that assault herself. So someone in the Huffington Post said, hey, maybe the New York Times should have had this as a headline. Approximately 1 in 4 of 90% of non-representative sample of women who responded to non-representative survey of transgender reported experience sexual assault with sexual assault take to mean anything from being on the receiving end of an unsolicited kiss to forcible penetration, gunpoint, regardless of the particular context. I hope you're still awake, because this is not really clickbait material. But it is the more honest story here, right? And I think when we talk about something as serious as sexual assault, we should also take the facts seriously. So third statistical line, the overconfident decimal point. Our news is full of very precise numbers, with 2 or 3 digits behind the decimal point. And that gives the impression that these numbers must be true, objective, because they're so precise. Well, let's take a look at one, kind of the queen of these things, GDP growth. GDP growth is an important number because based on this statistic, economists tell us whether our country is in recession or not. So last year, statisticians in the United States announced that April to June 2015, the GDP growth was 2.3%. A month later, said, 3.7%. Another month later, said, 3.9%. So it jumped so much in such a short period. Does this mean that these statisticians were not doing their job well? No. What this means is that GDP is incredibly difficult to calculate, and it takes time. Just look at this very boring table. Don't even bother reading it, but just to show you all the components that go into GDP. There are a lot. So it takes time to get good, accurate data on these. So no wonder that these statisticians were revising the numbers as they went. So you might wonder, why should I care? I never liked